So my name is Bjórn Westphal and I'm a technical marketing manager for STMicroelectronics. I joined ST last year in October, and before I was working on the car maker side. I was responsible for several interior camera programs, especially for BMW in the last 13 years. So I have the experience, coming from the customer side, and this is what I try to take as a leverage to help ST to improve business. For me especially, of course, it's important at first stage to show our products or product ideas to the customer. This is the reason why we're here. And the second, it's very important for me to have these networking opportunities. Because what we see here is like a community. You see the same people again and again. And from time to time, it makes sense to have an exchange face to face, even if you have a concrete topic, I would say. And this is a very good opportunity, just also in an open-minded environment, at the evening, in the shows, not just when we are standing at the booth. So, and this is, I think, a very unique opportunity, and it's just about in-cabin sensing, and this is perfect for us, because we are focused on that. The most important product we have for interior sensing currently is our RGB-NIR sensor, 5 megapixel. For Shibuya, you see here the VD9040. I mean, it's about the RGB-IR story in general. It's very important to understand that RGB-IR is something where we see a growing demand, because the car makers at the end don't want to spend money for two cameras. They want NIR picture, which is used for the algorithm stuff, as we heard several times yesterday, and I also see here all the customers that are interested in AI, of course, see it. And on top, maybe we have this RGB pass, colorized pictures for selfie, for video conferencing, for remote surveillance functions. And this is something we can integrate in dependency to a special imager technology for the customers both ways. So, and this is especially the complete story about RGB-IR, and what is really special what we present here is that we have some technical differentiation compared to other competitors, which also offers RGB-IR, because we have a very smart pre-processing on the sensor that will help the customer to define an easy way the integration, the architecture, and also have a good effect on BOM, on the complete system cost. The complete story of interior sensing was starting with NIR-based cameras. And at the beginning, for car makers, it was important to have some differentiation against the competitors, but it was not necessary to have it. Later then, with Euro NCAP and all with the discussion, all the legally aspects we know from the government, it's also important to have it in the car. The problem is, if you have an NIR camera in the car anyhow, the question is what could be the added value to the business case for the customer. It's not just about NIR and pure driver monitoring. The first thing is you want to complete the complete cabin, not just the driver. For that reason, you need higher resolution. And as I said, added value would be something like colorized pictures. And for that, RGB and NIR come into game. Because instead of having two cameras, as I said, you can do it with one camera. And as you said, I think you can imagine one camera is much cheaper than two. There are RGB sensors, RGB-IR sensors out there also from competition. You know, the problem when it comes to RGB-IR is you need to treat the data different. For example, you have to subtract the IR part from the RGB part to show an RGB picture, and the other way around. You have to subtract the RGB information from the IR pixel to show the pure IR image. So this is some kind of processing that is needed. You can do it on a centralized ECU later, but this costs you either additional ISP in hardware, which is very special to handle 4-channel information, because normally ISP is using 3 channels, as you know, just red, green and blue. Or you can do it by manually implementing algorithms on DSP, CPU, ARM core, whatever. But this is a matter of computation capacity, which you don't have necessarily. So we decided to integrate this logic in the sensor. This is the reason why we call this sensor 3D stacked. There are 2 wafers. One wafer on the upper level is just a pixel technology, and below we have a logic. And this logic, everything of the pre-processing I mentioned will be done, so you can easily take the stream as a classical RGB imager or NIR imager, in dependency, whatever you want, also in parallel. And this is very unique because, as I said, the competitor doesn't offer this kind of logic. And on top, what is very important, I would say, is, you know, when it comes to illuminated systems, you need the shutter technology like global shutter. because you want to expose every line at the same time. So you spare the energy of illumination. Because when you do it with rolling shutter, then you have a longer exposure in total because you're exposing line per line per line per line. And so in total you need more illumination, and this is something you cannot afford because illumination in the car with a high power density will cause heat issues, and also at the end it's very expensive to have an illumination system like that that can handle that. So for that reason it's important to have two shutter technologies. For illumination, a global shutter, and for HDR, which is also one of our great features, integrated in the sensor with dual exposure, you need a rolling shutter because there you have less read noise. And when you have less read noise, you have a good contribution to the SNR in total, and also for the HDR capabilities when it comes to dynamic range. So these are things that are clearly differentiating this sensor from what we see on the competition. So currently we are in the stage of final qualification of this sensor. So it will be available as a full qualified product for production at the end of this year. But we have already projects currently ongoing with customers, and they take this sensor in their development to build up a camera. So we will see, at least I cannot give you names, but we have at least two great car makers, one in Europe and one in US, who will take the sensor, and you will see it between 24 and 26 SOP on the street. So, and for all the others who have interest, the sensor, as I said, is available, full qualified for production ready at the end of the year.